All right, let's get started. Thanks for joining us again. We're happy to have you here with us today to talk about digital shelf primary images. Quickly, before we get started, we'll do a couple housekeeping items. First, this event is being live captioned by 3Play Media. So if you would like to access the captions, just click on the closed caption button in the Zoom dashboard at the bottom of your screen. And then likewise, also in the Zoom dashboard at the bottom of your screen is the button for question and answer. We will leave time at the end for Q&A, so please drop your questions in there and we will get to them at the end. All right, so my name is Bridget Ling. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Razor. Razor is a marketing technology company based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we leverage three primary things: behavioral science, our own configurable technology platform, and our strategy and creative teams to influence consumer decisions in the financial services, healthcare, and consumer packaged goods (CPG) space. And we use a tool called SellCheck to take a look at digital shelf primary images, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to specifically talking about how we can optimize these images for better e-commerce conversion. We have two experts here today with us to talk about this. So I would like to introduce Lynn Neal, Razor's Global Practice Officer. Prior to Razor, Lynn spent 33 years at Procter & Gamble, leading their behavioral science activation for P&G brands and retailers. And I'd also like to introduce Jay Tennell, our e-commerce strategist here at Razor. He is the subject matter expert on all things organic e-commerce, retail, shopping experience related. So happy to have you here with us today, Lynn and Jay, and I will turn it over to you.
Oh, thanks so much, Bridget, and thanks to all of you for joining today. We think we got some really interesting content, some learnings you can really walk away with and make use of ASAP. Always tangible that way. We talked about how we can look at our images and make sure we're optimizing them for the online marketplace. But does that really matter? So we're actually going to start with a little audience question right here. I'll have you guys take a look at this. What percent of CPG is currently bought online? We're going to pop up a poll and let you pick from 4 possible answers here.
You should see a poll on your screen. What percent of CPG purchases are made online? I'll give you a minute here to answer.
Take your pick.
Just about everybody's answers in.
Getting them in. Where are we landing, Bridget?
All right. Well, it's a little bit of a split decision. We have 40% coming in as our top vote getter at 67%.
Okay, got it. So a lot of people landing at that 40%, and you think that would be true given all the popularity of CPG online, the acceleration due to COVID, et cetera. However, the percent CPG bought online is at 10% these days. Now that's still significant. It probably just shows how much CPG is still bought in the physical space. What I'll tell you to give some relevance to that number on the 10%, that might sound surprisingly low to you. That's about 5 times what it was just 8 years ago. So we have really accelerated how much CPG is bought online, but a lot of it's still bought in brick and mortar. That said, so online still plays an important role. Let's bring up one more question here, Jay. What percent of CPG is influenced by online experiences? Let's bring up that poll again.
All right, take your guess. What percent of CPG are influenced online? All right, again, Lynn, 40% was our winner here as well.
All right, but I saw us push up the scale right on that. Well, the studies end up showing that about 60% of CPG is influenced online. Now, think about that with all of our social feeds that we have. I'd also think about, online as search that we have going on. Amazon is a really popular search engine for CPG. Think about your own experience when you're looking for info on product, what the ratings are, what others' experience are. So people are leaning on online for solutions to their CPG questions. And it actually has a very high influence on what is actually bought in store. So we've got to make sure that digital storefront is optimized and performing the way we want it to do. And a lot of that starts with how we image our products. What we're going to touch on today is making sure that you can consistently present your package in its right and accurate light, but also do so in a way that is exactly right for the environment. And with that, I'll pass it over to our expert. Jay, it's in your hands.
Awesome. Thanks, Lynn. All right, so let's jump into it. We're going to talk about 7 tips to optimize primary or hero images for e-commerce PDP, and we're going to do it without compromising that in-store experience. So let's jump into 8 primary images on an Amazon search page for desktop. Which products jump out to you most at a quick glance? Tip number 1 is be seen and leverage contrast. So do you change your answer on which one has the best contrast or least contrast? So let's run it through our Human Vision AI software for some extra insight. We can see that Kingdom Pets on the upper right is getting a lot of attention, as well as the 2 True Chews just right of center. Let's see how these products would show up at a quick glance in terms of like order. The eye would start here. You would glance over left, right, and down. But what if you're Full Moon? That's the brand that's lower left, this one right here. So Full Moon has white packaging on a white search page. So that contrast is lacking. So we actually worked with the team to develop a quick pivot on an alternative solution to this primary image. Here's a quick optimized version. We're leveraging the bold orange that's seen on the left side of the packaging. So we're exposing it with a quick 45-degree turn. And that cage-free chicken icon is also bolded on the right of the package. So little quick adjustments that help a little bit more in terms of contrast.
Hey, Jay, if I might pile on with this one a little bit from just a behavioral science standpoint, a couple of things to observe. Just first of all, it doesn't denigrate the brand. It's not inventing a new package for them. It's just recognizing the asset and how we can make use of it. That little turn that was done here does 2 things. First of all, in a world of that full flat imagery, you're adding a little bit of a dynamic impression on that, in a field where we're seeing things as these consistent square rectangular package. That little turn gives it a little bit of visual interest. I also want to call out, it's obvious that we've aided this with that orange line up the side, but this actually constructs a little bit of a mini frame. And just we as humans, as we're navigating things, we've been taught that framed things hold some priority. They're supposed to hold some visual interest. So it's a nice little tie-in to, taking the real package, giving a visual interest with a slight angle here, but also creating that frame that'll help it pop.
That's great. Good insight, Lynn. All right, let's jump to tip number 2. We're going to take a look at this Oscar Mayer packaging example. So how well do you think this packaging works as a primary image? Odds are right now you're on desktop, but how well do you think it works on mobile? The mobile screen is the toughest image test. So tip number 2 is mobile first mentality. Let's see how Oscar Mayer is going to take this package and make it into a mobile optimized primary image. And we're going to break it down for you step by step on how they did it. 1, they started with scrapping the small and readable text. Now, we're not saying that these claims are not important or irrelevant. They're vital to the PDP, but they just don't fit here. The goal of the primary PDP or goal of primary image is to pull, to have enough information to pull that shopper from the search page to the PDP and have more information there. The second thing they did is increase the sizing legibility. So it's important, and we want to make sure that this is really clear for the shopper. So that family pack, 16 ounces. Next, increasing the font size on essential language and branding. Think about this like vital spatial real estate on the package. You try and do too much and a lot of things get lost in the mix. Lastly, drop the rest. These things might just end up being a distraction to the shopper. So what do they come out with? This mobile optimized version right here. So deli fresh mesquite smoked turkey breast, family pack, 16 ounces. That's it. So that's the mobile optimized version. Let's take a look at the packaging and side by side.
That's really helpful. I think one of the things that's powerful about a mobile first mentality, it's one of those, if you can make it play there, you'll be able to upsize this to digital screen. A lot of times they'll say, well, let's digitally optimize our package. And if we do that for what might be seen as a laptop or desktop appearance on Amazon, for example, we still haven't gone through that torture test, right? So this does that down at that mobile size. A couple of things I'll call out specifically that they did well on this package. First of all, they obviously dialed up some of the most important communication right here. A very clear branding from the Oscar Mayer logo down to the iconic Wienermobile that they have. They've also made it clear what the product is, but I think their real choiceful decision right here is how they reconstructed their family pack communication. Because one of the things that can be a little harder to communicate online is the value impression from a size or a count. And by having that locked up in that vertical before, they made it a little harder to visually process. So they brought that 16 ounce down as a nice violator that's distinct on the package. So not only do you understand who it's from, what it is, but you're going to get that more immediate value impression, even in the small format of mobile. Really nicely done on their part.
That's great. All right, tip number 3, we're going to jump into this gain example. So right after Oscar Mayer, you might be thinking there's a lot happening on this packaging. But we're going to focus our attention on the lower third of this package, which is mostly legal claims. So tip number 3 is play nice with legal. Let's see what the Gain brand team did alongside their legal team to compromise on a better primary e-commerce PDP. All right, so we're focusing on this section right here that's highlighted. Now, if we compare it to the mobile optimized version they came out with, this is what we get. They cleaned up the whole lower third, mostly clean space. It's mostly blank. They're only highlighting 112 packs. They also took the opportunity to increase the size of the pod on the right side of the packaging, as well as some of the contrast. If you look back and forth, you can see the colors. So really good job here on legal. Lynn, what do you think?
Well, I love the idea that our tip is to play nice with legal. We'd encourage you to play nice with all of your business peers right here. But we've all been on those rooms where we're trying to get something done, and legal has some requirements that we may see as possibly limiting to our business objectives. And I can imagine the conversation the Gain brand had with their legal here. But I think what they're recognizing is, boy, in a mobile environment, no one's going to have legibility of that small legal copy anyway. So let's align that that's not serving a purpose if we bring that over. But you could tell that there had to be a stake in the ground regarding those icons, that not only they had to be present, but they had to be of a legally required size. And so you could tell that the brand worked with that, but then probably negotiated with legal, saying, boy, what if we place them, up here in a different spot? Because they want to drive home that brand recognition and get to the 112 packs and not have their brand story and product recognition disrupted by some legal interrupter. So you can tell there was a good complementary dialogue here to make sure you meet legal requirements and do that in a way that still lets the brand present itself in the most effective way in mobile and digital.
Yeah. That's great. All right, we're going to continue with the detergent theme here. Let's take a look at this Tide example. So in the big picture of e-commerce, there's a lot of wasted dollars here. We think about the empty space in the handle and above the cap. The brand is paying for air, essentially, in fulfillment. So tip number 4 is rethink the physical packaging. And we're going to show this Tide Eco Box. Now, this example isn't anything new, but it still does a great job as a primary image. So those 96 loads, other claims and callouts are simple and legible throughout. They're doing a great job showing the product in use on the lower right, and that spatial real estate that we talked about being so vital is used really well here. Here's a before and after.
I think you hit on the nose here. I don't think this tip is about, hey, everyone ought to have an eco package. It's just one of those that if you do it, make sure that online you're presenting the cues that let the shopper know what they're getting and what's entailed. One of the challenges online is we don't have relevance of the size very well. So getting that scale and understanding, what we're getting is important. They did this here with the 96 loads. I mean, that is a large load count. So they're helping communicate the value in lieu of some other reference point by saying you're going to get a lot of loads out of this one. A couple of the things we'll call out on this. It might be obvious to us all that this is a box, a primary package that has a bladder inside of it. But as soon as you show that package on the box, if they just show this box alone, someone might think, that's the way our brains work. Someone might think, because they're so used to seeing that jug, that it's a box that's going to have a jug in it. So a couple of things. That dispensary image in the bottom right plays a role on not only how do you use this and how are you going to get the product out of it, it also sends the signal that this is the primary package. Make no mistake about it. You're going to be able to put this, in your pantry, on your counter, on your washing machine, and actually distribute it this way, and you don't have a jug inside. So a lot of things that this visual is doing, and it saves all the extra words that would have to go with it and might not be as clear in the visual in the end. So nice job by the brand.
Yeah, good Bills, Lynn. All right, next tip, we're going to shop for cough drops instead of detergent. So let's take a look at this Luden's example on mobile. Now, we can tell it's Luden's, it's wild cherry, but how many cough drops are in here? We can't quite make it out on the bottom of the image here because they're using the actual photo of the product. Now, there's a shimmer from the flash. It's wrinkled. It almost looks damaged. You don't really want to buy this, right? So tip number 5 is scrap the photo for a rendering. Now, here's a mechanical print file. Using print files is a better, cleaner look for the primary image. This can even be set up before the packaging is even in production, which helps the e-com team move faster on new products. This example is pretty straightforward and simple, but what it also does is it sets you up for success on more complicated items like multi-packs. So let's jump into a multi-pack example. Now, this Bounty example is not done by the brand. This is totally a third party, right? But we'll still use it for an example. Now, there's definitely, we can tell there's more than one. There's definitely 2 paper towels here, but I can't quite make out that yellow bar on top, how many I can expect in here. And you can't quite see how far this actually goes. But if we look at the mobile render, we can see it clearly shows the amount on that yellow bar. And it clearly stacks really nicely on the top of the image. Lynn, what do you see here?
Well, I think a couple of things, even going all the way back to the Ludens, is not only do you get clarity, you also get some flexibility in how you use the image, right? Now the render needs to be something that's going to deliver mentally when someone makes their choice. They're going to get confirmation of that when they get it delivered to them or when they purchase it elsewhere. So you want to have that cognitive link, and all these examples we've seen have done a good job of that. The only extra thing I will call out here is on that quantity, Jay, that often online shoppers might be hit by seeing a brand and then they see this price, and this price is like high. And what the brand may not have done is communicated that count value. And so by utilizing this rendering, and especially when you have these multi-packs, by using this perspective, whether it's Bounty paper towels or whether it's any other product where you've got a 10-pack or something like that, it's a great way to signal the value instantly that's going to be associated with that price. So rendering enables that to happen digitally, and you can have different count packs, but use that same front image as a primary on carrying it beyond. So nicely done here.
Good thoughts. Let's jump into the next one. All right, number 6. So here's a Barilla pasta packaging. We've covered 5 tips so far. We could take this a lot of different directions. GMO emphasis, ingredients, contrast, size. What's going to work best here? I don't know. So tip number 6 is actually test and learn. So let's have a few different examples here. On this version A, we have increased window featuring the product, and we have an emphasis on the amount on the lower part of the packaging. Version B, pretty similar, but this one has an emphasis on the protein plus and an emphasis on the 100% plant-based protein. So which one's more effective? Simply put, we don't know. There's no silver bullet to this. Test it for your brand and your category and see what works best. You can really focus on that glance view metric where shoppers are leaving the search page and coming to your PDP as a test for this. And trying to isolate other variables like out of stocks and promotions when you're testing before and afters with these.
Hey, Jay, I love this example of kind of fast learning on what's most relevant and leveraging that glance metric as a way to sort of vet through these. One thing that I'll just call out to brands, this is make sure your package is consistently recognizable by your core shoppers or possibly interested shoppers. You don't want to bring a schizophrenic presence. So I think what Barilla's done here is it's really obvious that they're keeping the content of their yellow package. It's protein plus, it's Barilla. You know what this product is. It's a matter of what are they going to lead with as their most desirable feature on this product, but make sure we don't set up an unintended barrier on the shopper understanding what the brand and the product is as you do some of this testing. So draw a line in there somewhere. It's a great way to, experiment lightly, but be careful of not confusing the shopper in the process of learning.
Definitely good builds. Still Barilla, still Protein Plus.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last tip. We're going to take a look at this Tresemme example. Now, this goes against some retailer guidelines, right? It's not that front of package only, but it's still helpful information. The background of this actually comes from, it's a mobile-ready hero image, and it comes from a Cambridge University study alongside Unilever to develop a better shopping user experience. But the retail requirement is to just show front of package only. But we know there's better methods out there. So tip number 7 is push the brand and pull the retailer. Let's take a look at another example here. So we have goldfish. Now, this goldfish example technically goes against a lot of retailer guidelines, right? But it has great communication on multi-pack expectations with the 20 packs on the upper right. There's goldfish swimming in the upper left, similar to the commercials and ads. And there's a block of cheese for cheddar on the bottom right. But they're the #1 bestseller in their category. Retailers, consumers, and brands are all winning with a better primary image. So brands, share your test and learns with your retailers. Let's all work together to develop new standards and help shape a better retailer shopping experience.
And I think it's important here to call out that retailer and brand in this case have common shared objectives. We want to drive more sales, and I haven't found retailers to be, to walk away from that when there's an opportunity within reason. So that's the idea. If your brand might have some learning, some data back ideas to bring forward, you can also say if you've got some retailer guidelines, but if you're seeing other brands do some things within that retailer platform, leverage that information as precedence on what other brands are doing, and ensure that your brand is staying up with some of the current latest thinking, including if it might nudge what the retailer has provided in writing. Let's make sure we're looking at what's going on out there and what's driving a superior consumer experience for both the retailer and the brand.
Absolutely. A lot of brands are playing in that gray area.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's it. 7 tips for optimizing digital shelf primary images. Feel free, take a screenshot.
Yeah, we'll certainly want folks to screenshot here. As Jay and I were thinking through this and had the genesis of doing this webinar, we just recognized as we were working with clients, we were seeing some of this knowledge not consolidated. We're kind of getting a mixed bag amongst our clients as we were optimizing PDP. So thought it might be helpful for you guys to tap into. It's tip of the iceberg on a number of ways that we're working to optimize PDP pages. So happy to talk with you guys about any other insights we have in that space and work with you on any of your digital storefronts to make sure they're optimized and working as hard as possible.
Absolutely. Great. All right, Bridget, do you have any questions?
We do have a couple questions, and we do have time for a few questions. So if anybody hasn't submitted their question yet, please go ahead and do so now. All right, let's take a look here. The first question is, how do you see brands convincing leadership to get the budget to work on something like this or prove that it should be a priority for digital shelf?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say look back at the metrics, right? I mean, look at the glance view metrics, be aware of your conversion rate and kind of the share of search, and kind of pull it all together for that kind of opportunity formula for increasing that and what the return could be.
All right. The next question is, you mentioned tracking engagement metrics. Are there partners or tools that you recommend or that you track, or tools you use to track KPIs for digital shelf?
A whole lot. Yeah. So we use some internal tools. We have third parties. We also will pull in brand insights and tools to kind of give a more holistic perspective. But there's a lot of great tools out there.
I want to go backwards just a little bit on that earlier question. You made me think with your response on building the data case. I will also tell you that, visuals are worth 1,000 words on this. So whether you're category leader or not, go out and see what some others are doing that, our leaders or you guys, judgmentally internally saying, gosh, these guys seem to be doing this right. And have some visuals of that to help make your internal sales. You combine that with data, it's a really strong 1-2 punch. We know how hard it is to get some internal momentum. Our experience with our clients is the payout is well worth it on optimizing your store digitally. It's actually an easier store to optimize than it is in some of the brick and mortar retail environments. So we hope you find that the investment is small and that the energy to do it is going to be there when you find some compelling metrics and some visuals associated.
That's very true, Lynn. Thanks for adding that.
Couldn't help myself. Been in that situation.
How would we know if we need one of these optimizations?
I think it depends on your glance view metric again. But I mean, it could be a lot of things. I mean, we can definitely chat more offline on that subject as well. But it's if you look at your glance view metrics, it could be anything from like dropping that, confusion in the conversion space. It could be ratings and reviews even that pop up where there's conflict. So.
Yeah, I'll add to that one. You already have a metric that 60% of CPG purchases are influenced by online. Is your influence optimized? 10% is purchased online. That's a quintupling in recent years. You would expect that to still grow. The whole idea of how you're going to present your brand, your storefront, and optimize your equity presentation. I mean, it just sends a signal of what you stand for out there. And it's one of those on sort of how can you afford not to? Now, one of the simple assessments would be, look at your peer group out there and you can sort of self-assess where you're fitting in that. And we'd be happy to talk with anyone on doing an objective metric-based, behavioral science-based observation of where you are right now and how you could become the leader of the pack in your categories.
I love this last question that's been submitted. Are you planning to do more tips webinars like this? Yes, the short answer is yes.
We love it. Make sure you hit us up with any of your greatest needs. Again, we surface this one. Sometimes we just see some common needs that we have out there and want to make sure that people are getting the benefit of some shared knowledge here. So yeah. We'll commit to continue doing that. You guys commit to signing up, and take a listen to them and talk with us about your particular situation. Always happy to help.
Yeah, make sure to subscribe on our website to get those webinar invitations. So sellcheck.com, you can.
Secondary images are top of mind for sure. But I mean, if there's other like specific PDP elements or retailers of interest, definitely let us know.
Oh, yeah. Well, that is all the questions we have. Jay and Lynn, thank you so much for walking us through this topic. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. Really appreciate it. We will be emailing out a recording of this webinar. Please share it across your network and get in touch with us for any questions or further thoughts. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.